Right, good afternoon, everyone. How are we having a good time so far this morning? Yeah? So this is one of the first times we've done a live show as part of the Nduranz Podcast. So if you're not familiar with that, we've been running the podcast for a number of years. We've had some great guests. So head over to YouTube or whatever you listen to podcasts on. It could be Spotify. Type in Nduranz and take a listen, because there's some fantastic topics and some great guests that we've had. Just an introduction, I'm Alex, who hosts the podcast, and not that it needs any introduction, but I'm going to introduce our guest in a minute. But we're going to go through, have an interview with him, have a great discussion. There's going to be time for question and answer afterwards, and then an opportunity to meet and greet. So if you want a photograph, that is your time. So, like I said, our guest right here needs no introduction. He's given us some of the greatest moments in cycling history, some of the most entertaining, 4-time Tour de France winner, Chris Froome. Welcome. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
And how are you this morning? Have you had a chance to head around the show?
Yeah, this is my first time at a Eurobike. Pretty incredible, actually. Amazing to see how many different brands there are and the different parts of the bike industry.
I was a bit worried when you went off about 20-30 minutes ago that we weren't going to get you back, and you're going to be busy, with crowds of people around you to get your photo. Does that happen everywhere you go?
It depends, really. It depends. I definitely feel there's a kind of like, during the winter, people kind of forget about cycling a little bit, and I can move around a bit more freely. But once we get into the summer and Tour de France, and then cycling is more at the forefront of people's mind, I find I tend to get stopped a lot more. But I think it also depends where in the world I am. When I'm in the US as well, I think there's just so many much bigger sports over there, and cycling's not really quite on the same level. So the US, I walk around pretty relaxed.
But in Europe, it's a bit more tricky.
Europe and Asia as well. Asia, I think cycling is booming at the moment as well. So it seems to be on the up.
So as I mentioned, you've given us some incredible moments that go down in cycling history. You know, you've got your Tour de France wins, your Vuelta, your Giro. You know, running up run 2, your attack in the solo attack in the Giro. Is there any one, or is there one bit that stands out in your career that is just tops that list of most memorable moments?
I mean, yeah, there are definitely a few moments. I mean, the ones you mentioned now that definitely stand out more than others. But just from a pure, I guess, racing.
Hello.
From a pure racing point of view, I think the day of the Giro probably really stands out to me, because there was no other day of my racing career that won me a Grand Tour in one day. Yeah. In the sense that day did.
Yeah.
And there was a pretty cool story behind it, but I'm sure we'll get into that.
And we're going to get into some of that a little bit later, which again is going to be fascinating around how that was planned, and actually nutritional strategies and things like that went into that day. But you've had such a fantastic and long career. And still racing. You've experienced just the evolution of the style of racing, the technology, the sports science, the nutrition across it. How has your view of the sport really changed since those earlier days where it perhaps wasn't so prominent, and we see nowadays the style of race is a little bit different, especially from like the Team Sky days where they were kind of the pioneers to dominate, and now it's a little bit up in the air.
Yeah, I mean, things have definitely changed over the course of the last 10 years. I think post-COVID, I think everyone had that break for COVID, and I think for me as well, just on a very personal level, 2019, I had a big accident where I never fully actually recovered from that in terms of finding that top level again. But following that accident, then obviously we went into the COVID year. Big break. Everyone had a break from racing as well, so that's kind of meant the period for me away from racing got extended even longer. And I think made it even harder to get back to the competitive side of the sport. But I really felt that after COVID, there was a huge switch and a lot more focus on nutrition, fueling, on that side of the sport. And I think once people started changing their fueling strategies, I think the racing started changing as well. We were no longer getting this more predictable style of racing where a break would go, things would calm down, everyone kind of, you let the break go, give it 5, 6, 7, 8 minutes, and then slowly start winding things up towards the final, and either you catch the break or you don't. But now it just seems like sometimes it might be 100 kilometers of racing in the morning until the break actually goes. Everyone just wants to be in that break and to be ahead of the race. And then we won't give them more than 2 minutes now, like a minute and a half, 2 minutes, and the teams are already riding. Like it's very little, I guess, downtime during the race.
Yeah.
So things have changed, and I think a big part of that is due to fueling, and part of that fueling, I think we've just seen numbers going up. Like in the past, we never used to fuel specifically counting the carbohydrate intake like we do now, and it certainly wasn't up at 120 grams an hour where it is now when we're racing.
And do you think that is now giving the riders just much more confidence to say, I can go longer, or I can go at this point, because we are seeing longer attacks out, and go back to the iconic attack in the Giro, and that was kind of the first that we ever saw, and it was just totally caught everyone out, an amazing thing. But now we are seeing a bit more frequent, like Gatch and the likes are going with 60, 80k, and you're like, whoa, I
mean, when I did that back in the Giro in 2018, I think it was still, it really kind of caught people out and really shocked people, because it wasn't really how GC riders were racing at that time. A lot of people, I guess, referred it back to the olden days of kind of Eddie Merckx and guys like that racing. That's the kind of racing they remember back in that era. But it was a little bit kind of, we hadn't seen that kind of racing, and I think especially being able to do that attack, I had to fuel very specifically for that. And after the race was done and we talked about the fueling strategy and everything else, I think then that almost started the process of people thinking about, hold on a second, how much exactly are we fueling in the races, and can we push that even higher, and will that allow us to attack further out like Chris did in the Giro? And I unfortunately, I think I actually almost started a little bit of a trend there, I guess. And it's just carried on from there.
And I think retrospectively, we saw things come out, and James Morton at the time talking about that, and the strategy that went behind that particular performance. And then we were starting to see 60, 90 gram specific points on that, and it was well executed. But at that point in time, I remember looking at that and going, wow, people are doing 90 grams now, and it's like, wow, that's a lot, that's pretty innovative. But that's something that was just starting to come in, and you were working at that point in time.
Yeah, definitely. And I think working with James Morton was a big part of that for sure. The plan really only came together the last minute, if I'm honest, on that day, because we always knew it was going to be a massive stage. But the plan initially had been, okay, just fuel really, really well, and that means that once we hit the final climb, I'll have more than the other guys, and I might be able to take a bit of time. But attacking 80 Ks out, that wasn't necessarily the plan. That was only really on the bus on the way to the start. I was thinking, just kind of thinking to myself and talking to my wife, talking to my coach on text message. and I just came up, just started asking myself those questions. Hold on, I'm basically 4 minutes away from being in the lead of this Giro. I'm not going to get 4 minutes on one climb. If I'm gonna win this race or try and even have a chance of winning, I'm going to have to do something pretty outrageous here.
Yeah.
And I kind of looked at the profile that day, and it was basically just Col de la Finestra, down, a little bit of valley, up to Sestriere, down, a little bit of valley, and straight up again. So 3 big climbs. I was like, you know what? Why don't I just go on the first one, and it's going to be a time trial from there to the end. And if they start messing around behind and they start basically questioning who's gonna pull, who's stage 19 of the Giro, there's not going to be many guys who are fresh at that point, not many teammates to pull. And I just figured, you know what, let's go for it. Let's go for it. I told everyone on the team, this is what we're going to do. We're going to ride as hard as possible before the gravel on Col de la Finestra, the first 10 Ks. And then once we hit the gravel, I'm just going to try and go alone there, and let's kind of cross the fingers and hope that behind they don't organize themselves properly. And I could just feel this, I could feel the kind of the plan coming together as we started riding on the paved section of Col de la Finestra, and seeing some of the domestiques from other teams just falling. Basically the pace was just too high, too early. They didn't expect it to be so hard, and I could see guys just flicking that switch and switching off, coming out of the bunch. And I was like, okay, that's another strong domestique gone, another one, until there was only really the leaders left. And I remember thinking, this is perfect. If they don't follow me, then they don't have anyone to pull either. There's going to be 3-4 guys all looking at each other. This is the perfect scenario. And
you
the rest
had Swannies at specific points as well.
Exactly. So I mean, in terms of the fueling, that was something we'd organized the night before already. That basically, pretty much every 10 Ks of the stage, we had someone else with bottles, with gels, food, and the goal was to try and hit 100 grams an hour, which we'd never really done that before. But yeah, we were going to give it a try, and basically that was going to be the only way I'd be able to execute that kind of an effort. So,
and I think it probably scoped the way for the modern day racing that we see now. So I guess we can thank you for that as well. Given some of over these years, looking back from 2010, 2012, there has been lots of changes in the dynamics of racing, changes in fueling, things like that. Is there anything now that you do different, or have you changed in your approach to training, your approach to racing, that is different from back then?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, we definitely to try and reach. I mean, everyone knows power to weight. That's the big goal for us. Try and get our weight as low as possible, but then obviously you still need to be doing all the intensity side to keep working on the power outputs and lifting your zones in every area possible. But at the time we were doing a lot of very low carb training back in 2011, 12, 13, 14, 15, actually all the way through the years that I was winning. A large part of our training would be low carb training, going out only with a bit of protein in the stomach, and then fueling as the ride goes on, doing long rides, 6-7 hour rides like that, just feeling terrible, feeling like just no one talking, everyone just grumpy because they're so hungry. We got on with it, and that's what we did back then to try and get the weight down. But you're seeing much less of that now. Guys are just fueling every session. I think on the flip side, probably eating a lot less off the bike currently, but certainly during sessions now, guys are very, very much more fueled than previously.
And we were talking earlier with Tim about that, and the periodization of nutrition nowadays is really at the forefront of of performance and nutrition at this moment in time. So do you think that some of that, can really account for the performances that we're perhaps seeing now, or the advancement in speeds and the style of racing that we have? Do you think that attributes to it?
I think that's a huge part of the change that we've seen, especially in these last 5 years, is not only a guy's fueling a lot more and able to basically push harder for longer, but we're also seeing equipment's changed. Obviously, everyone's on disc brakes where they weren't 10 years previously. Aerodynamics are changing, clothing's changing, helmets, everything, every part of the whole package has just got more streamlined, faster, lighter, and then the fueling to go with it. I think we're just seeing speeds, all the sort of famous times on different mountain passes. We're seeing those records being broken time and time again now. It just feels like the whole sport has increased in speed.
I think from an audience perspective as well, we see that as well. But just take us through, how much, and again, it'd be nice to see in contrast back, if we think about the SkyTrain or the Team Sky days, where there was much more control over the peloton and things like that, to the bit more unpredictable nature of cycle racing now. How much in a Grand Tour really comes down to planning versus improvisation, or do you need a little bit of both and kind of go with the moment and change things yourself?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting question, because you've still got the bigger teams who are in control. Obviously, UAE, Visma, controlling the race in a similar way to what we did back on Team Sky. But having said that, there's a lot more opportunity for guys to attack further out now than previously, and we're seeing a much bigger fight for that morning breakaway earlier in the race as well. So that it kind of opens the race up in a sense, but it's strange, because at the same time we're also seeing less and less breakaways reach the finish than we did previously. Like back when I was winning, I think we'd really just be focused on winning their overall, and quite frankly, if there was a break that wasn't a threat to us, we'd let them go and fight it out for the finish. Whereas now it feels like almost if UAE is not going to close it and they have the leader's jersey, you'll find another team will come and close it because they want to race for the finish. So very, very few breakaways are actually making it to the finish now.
And I guess from a fueling perspective, maybe just that better knowledge, that better understanding of this is happening in a race. Oh, I know what to do now from a fueling perspective. I can go and attack here, or I can chase that down, because if I'm going to spend more on, perhaps I can take a few more carbs on, or
100%. And I think part of the reason that we're seeing, I was talking earlier that guys are not giving those breaks 5-10 minutes like we did in the past. We're only giving them a minute and a half, 2 minutes, and then behind they actually start riding pretty fast at the same speed as the break, and holding them close all day is part of that is fueling as well. I mean, guys know now that the break is fueling so much better. So guys in the break will be eating over 120 grams an hour because they're burning through that. So we can't give them 10 minutes like we did in the past.
And just expect fatigue to take place further down.
Exactly.
So I kind of want to just dive into the more nutrition aspect, the fueling aspects, and just take you actually right back, just an interesting question of your childhood and growing up, because you grew up in Nairobi and moved to South Africa. And we were talking about this at breakfast this morning, that there are different traditions around the world of what traditional food is. What kind of things were you eating as you grew up in, the cultural traditions of Nairobi and South Africa?
Honestly, it wasn't really hugely different. I guess the only real big difference growing up in Africa was just the fresh fruits and vegetables you get over there. Everything seems to be kind of organic and homegrown, if you like, and necessarily kind of the processed kind of food you get in the supermarkets generally in Europe. So I felt everything there really just has a lot more flavor. And anyway, that's how I remember it when I was growing up. But I was always a pretty skinny kid. I don't think I really understood nutrition, or that's something I had to learn about through my career. I mean,
and in those early days of your career, what kind of guidance was there? Was there any guidance, if anything, around being able to fuel?
I mean, it really took me, I think, so I turned professional at the age of 24, and I can happily say now, even then, I had no idea what I was doing nutritionally. It was eat a bowl of pasta, have a bowl of cereal, whatever. But it took me a few years of racing to really understand my body, understand what foods work better. For me, gluten as well was a big thing. Cutting out gluten, really just keeping things simple for the digestion. Especially when we're putting the kind of load on our bodies that it takes to train and race races like the Tour de France.
And did you find it difficult to consume the amounts that you need to, especially during a Grand Tour, so that to try and keep on top of that fatigue, you day after day, you're getting off the bike and you're eating? Is that quite challenging from a rider perspective?
It's definitely challenging. I mean, luckily you feel hungry most of the time when you're racing, so it's easy to just keep consuming so much. But where it gets difficult is once you're sort of about 2 weeks into the Grand Tour, and you're just you get this food fatigue. You're just tired of cramming yourself full of, especially rice, white rice. You just get so sick of it. It's one of the easiest things to digest and get the carbohydrates, but you really do just start to feel, I guess, sick of it after a while. So you get up for breakfast and you look at your big mound of white rice and you're just like, oh, I can't do that today. But you have to. You have to get it in, otherwise you're going to be on the bike and you're just not going to have the fuel for that day. You're going to get halfway through the stage and you're just going to start feeling lousy. So, and I have made mistakes. I've made big mistakes through my career, especially during that sort of low carb period. I'd go into stages that you'd think on paper look relatively easy, and you'd be like, okay, I don't really need to fuel that hard today. I'll stay a bit on the lighter side. Stay light for the mountains was always kind of the thinking. But and there were days, I think it was even in the 2016 Tour de France, where I had the yellow jersey and I lost it halfway through the race because I just blew up in the final. I just didn't have the legs, I didn't have the fueling. And I lost it to Fabio Aru from Astana about 2 weeks through the race. But needless to say, I probably went into the next rest day or whatever it was and fueled up properly, ate a massive meal, and then I bounced back. I was fine. Luckily, got it back again a few days later. But it's really, I guess, a fine line for us of under fueling and not quite eating enough.
And I guess that's probably one of the biggest challenges that you face as riders. And we always talk about the Grand Tours and things. They're not won on one mountain. They're about consistency over the race. But equally, that's going to come from consistency of fueling and eating. And is that one of the biggest challenges that you actually face as a rider, is having enough and being able to get enough in?
100%. I think I almost developed this technique of trying to get as skinny and lean as possible before the Grand Tours, so that once you get to the Grand Tour, you can actually afford to overeat slightly, so you'll never go empty now. And looking at like that example I just talked about in 2016, where I blew up and didn't have the legs in the final, and I think I probably lost about a minute or something to my rivals. You just don't see that so much now anymore. You don't see riders blowing up because they're not fueling anymore, because everyone's fueling over 100 grams an hour. So you just don't see these massive, spectacular explosions like you used to see in the past. And that's a real clear signal to me that basically everyone is just really on top of their fueling and really tracking what they're eating a lot more than what we did in the past.
And do you think that's also been advanced by, you know, the evolution of sports science and actually how we consume those now? You know, if you think back in the days and, you know, gels or, you know, whatever we ate came in small amounts, or we were eating solid foods, like the actual application and the quantities that we can get in now relatively easy have just grown a lot. Do you think that certainly helps and has pushed this forward?
I think that's definitely helped, and I think especially the nutrition suppliers. I mean, Endurance, a great example of that, is producing products that are easy to digest and get in. Because previously, I mean, I think if you had told us 10 years ago, okay, you got to try and do over 100 grams an hour, you'd probably be able to do it for an hour or two, and you'd feel sick. You just the products we had weren't the same. I think in terms of the composition of the products and how easy they were to actually get down. I think now companies like Endurance are making products to that scope that you can actually get over 100 grams an hour down and keep it down, and it actually goes into your body and you use it as energy. Whereas previously, I don't think that was actually the case.
Yeah. So, is there any particular way, you know, given all this and the advancements and the experience of, you know, your cycling career, do you have a go-to strategy that kind of works for you now in preparation for either, you know, a hard one day or you know, going to a Grand Tour or a stage race? Do you have particular go-tos now?
I mean, yeah, it's really similar in training. Basically, what we're doing on a hard interval day in training is very similar to what we'll be doing in the race. So again, out in training, we'll be doing over 100 grams of carbs an hour on a big interval day, but we'll go out and we'll be burning most of that, obviously doing the intervals. But for me, I can pretty easily make up the 100 grams. I've got an easy formula that I use. One bottle of 45 gram mix, one 45 gel, that gets me to 90 already. And my favorite product from Endurance actually is the energy chew, the little gummy chew. It's almost tastes like a Haribo bar if that existed. So basically those three products add up to about 112 grams an hour for me, and I just try and repeat that for every hour during the race.
Yeah. And in terms of also the pre-preparation for it, you know, again, is there any more advancement, or have you changed the way you approach that in terms of, you know, what you eat prior to it, the preparation that goes into it, to make sure that you've either got, you know, full glycogen stores or you're trying to keep out race weight?
I mean, I haven't actually changed what I'm eating so much in terms of breakfast. I mean, breakfast for me has always been a big bowl of rice with some egg whites. But now it's become a lot more calculated. Now I know almost on a daily basis I'm in touch with a nutritionist, and depending on where we were the day before and what the needs of the following stage are, we'll adjust the quantity of that rice, the breakfast rice.
Yeah. And has there been any point as well that you've really felt like this is actually, you know, this has really saved me, this has made the difference in me achieving this? I mean, maybe we go back to the Giro again, but you know, there any other points where I thought, actually, I've either got this or I've sworn it, and that's really saved me in this particular race? So
I can remember the evening and the morning before that Giro stage, literally eating, I think more than I'd ever eaten I think it was over 500 grams of rice. I mean, if you know what that looks like, it's literally a mountain on your plate. And I can remember my teammates looking at me being like, man, are you really gonna eat all that? And I persevered and I got all of it down. And I can't remember who it was, but I remember one of my teammates coming to me after the finish and being like, "Yeah, glad you did that. Like, now I know why you ate that much, because basically just to get through a stage like that, you have to have that energy reserve."
So just kind of just coming away from that topic, I guess for the listeners out here, what does a typical training week look like? Because we talk about having to fuel for it and some of this consumption, but what does a typical training week look like for you?
I mean, it depends very much on what kind of a phase I'm in. If I'm doing much more intensity or more volume, but I'd say anywhere from 25 hours up to 35 hours of training a week on the bike, and then a few gym sessions, either just core stuff or some light weights off the bike. But I think that's pretty standard. A mixture of 2 to 3 day blocks of training, especially getting ready for stage racing. And
in terms of intensity, I guess that varies. You do a bit more volume in the lower season.
Exactly. Earlier in the season, less intensity, more volume. Typical sort of pyramid structured training program.
And do you adapt your nutrition for that? Like in the off season, and perhaps eat a bit differently.
So, I mean, when I said earlier that we don't necessarily do low carb training like we used to in the past, we still do it to an extent. I mean, you're still on the endurance days. You're not going to go and fuel at 120 grams an hour just to go and turn the legs at sort of zone 2. That doesn't make sense. So you probably cut back to, I don't know, 50, 60 grams an hour for those kind of endurance rides. Keeps the body efficient, keeps the body kind of still working. But you don't need to be over fueling in that sense.
And for given all this experience and all the knowledge that you've gained over this time, for the the amateur or ambitious cycler out there, what would be your biggest nutrition takeaway or piece of advice that you could give to them? Might be quite a difficult one.
I mean, always anticipate. Don't wait until you feel hungry. Always anticipate the effort that you're about to do. If you wait until you feel hungry before you start fueling, more times than not, it's too late. You almost need to think an hour ahead, an hour or 2 hours ahead even. I would say that's probably the biggest mistake people make is they go out and let's say they've got a 100-kilometer event to do. They'll ride the first 30, 40 without fueling, and then when they start feeling a bit thirsty and hungry, then they'll start fueling. But by then your stores are empty, and actually it's like a car. You're running just above empty tank. You can imagine you're not going to have
until you stop on the forecourt of the petrol station.
You're not going to have much in you. Whereas if from the very beginning you just keep topping up, like it doesn't actually put that much strain on your gut, and it keeps you above that empty mark where you want to stay away from.
And I guess for the likes of yourself, where you're training day after day, and some amateur cyclists and recreational cyclists will train multiple days as well. You always got to think about the next day whilst you're doing that session as well, or what you're having afterwards.
100%. I mean, everyone focuses so much on the training side of things and the fueling of training, but the recovery is equally important. I mean, the only reason you train is to get that super compensation that you get during your recovery period. So getting that recovery, the nutrition for your recovery is just as important as getting the nutrition for the training and the actual on the bike part.
So and we know that you've got to get a flight relatively soon, so I'd love to continue this chat. We could go on for hours talking about various things, but I do want to open up the floor for any questions that people have, so that we'll take a few questions, and then we'll also have an opportunity to, if people want photos or to come and Chris to come and sign something, we'll do that. So
more than happy to do that. Yeah. So
Yeah.
any questions from the floor?
Oh, we're all quiet. Sorry, okay.
Did you eat every day rice and egg whites in the tour?
Yes. Yep. That's kind of my standard pre-race meal, and yeah. Once we get on the bus, immediately at the finish, again there'll be another bowl of rice waiting, maybe with some chicken, something a bit different inside. It's either chicken and rice or eggs and rice, and then dinner, maybe some fish and rice. It's
not just omelette on it.
While we're racing, I don't think there's a huge place for vegetables, especially when we're in the mountains. You want to try and keep the fiber relatively low in your stomach, because your body is obviously using energy to digest that. And when we're racing, we just want to basically take in what we need for racing. And so, I mean, that's where supplementation comes in, and you want to be taking vitamins. It's not something you do for long term. But if you're in a specific event like the Tour de France, then you keep it very simple. Give your body what it needs for the race, and then you're supplementing with vitamins or whatever else to get the minerals on the side. Yeah.
Another one.
Hi Chris, yeah, that is not a question for me, for my daughter. It's a funny one. She wants to know how did you came up to make that video with the Bentley?
Yeah, that was a bit of fun. Someone showed me the video of the Bentley, the very attractive looking lady doing the Bentley video, and very quickly it was, well, we can do that. We can do that with the Factor bikes. Yeah, exactly. So had some fun making that.
Anyone else?
What was going through your head when you had to run? The bike was broke back in the day.
Yeah, I had a feeling that one was going to come up. Yeah, it was chaos. I mean, I just attacked the group that was behind the lead peloton at that point, and there were three of us, myself, Richie Port, and Balco Mollema, three of us just heading towards the finish. It was just over 1 kilometer from where we were when the motorbike in front of us slammed on brakes, and we were too close to react, and all three of us went down. But unfortunately, the motorbike that was behind us ran over my bike and broke my frame also at that point. And I knew my support car with my spare bike would have been behind the peloton that was about 1 minute behind us. So I knew at very least I'm going to have to stand there and just wait for 1 minute while the other guys are already riding off. I just thought in my head, the finish is only 1 kilometer away. If I can cover even 500 meters or I get closer to the finish, it's going to save me some time when I do get the bike. And also that point where we were was a very narrow point on the road, and there were just people everywhere, and I thought, I'm not even going to get a bike here. Like the car, it's going to be difficult for the car to get in here. But if I run closer to the finish, hopefully there will be some barriers and there'll be more space for us to change the bike and all the rest of it. But honestly, I also just couldn't stop. Like I knew I had to defend the yellow jersey. I had the yellow jersey, and I was like, I need to get to the finish. I need to get closer to the finish or get to the finish any way possible. And without a bike, it was only one solution. So, thanks.
Yeah, I was just wondering, outside the race routine, to build muscle you will need proteins. How do you build proteins in your routine?
So there's not a huge focus on proteins. I mean, we do obviously consume a lot of proteins in what we eat. It's always for example, some eggs in the morning, always some chicken or some fish straight after the stage, and even at night with our dinner, again would be normally some white meat. So I think from our diet, generally, we get quite a lot of protein, but in a lot of cases, we'd also take maybe some kind of a protein supplement as well before bed sometimes, especially, as you said, if you're looking at building muscle or trying to increase power. We would do that more in the winter, for example, not so much during the kind of like peak periods towards the summer of cycling, but yeah, during the winter, that's definitely something you find. Also depending on the body type, because sprinters would probably look to build more muscle than guys like the GC riders or the climbers. So it was never something that I really had a big focus on, but I think that there are guys within the sport who need more protein than others.
So we've got time just for one more question.
Yep.
What did the protein taste like?
What did the protein taste like? Delicious. They put some chocolate in there, so it tastes really good.
And that's probably our best question of the whole show. So. If we thank Chris for ever so much for coming on. In a minute we are going to open up for photos, and if you want Chris to sign some things. Just a reminder, first of all, if you haven't watched the Nduranz Podcast, head to YouTube or Spotify or whatever you listen to podcasts on. These shows will be going on as well, but we've also had some great guests on there, so go and take a listen. We are back tomorrow. For anyone who is here tomorrow, we've got Benji Neeson, who is the co-host of Lantern Rouge Podcast, a huge cycling content creator, so you might have come across him before, and that's going to be also a great talk. But thank you ever so much, Chris, for spending your time and coming to talk to everyone.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.